Hello, we're live.
Hi. We're live in an actual official broadcast studio today.
You are that's what you said to me.
Yeah.
How do you know? You
I
know,
don't know what. That is
when
in a
I first
broadcast.
jumped on the call, I
Oh,
said you're in a broadcast studio, and you went, "How do you know?" And I was like, "Well, because it's really obvious. You're
but
either
it's
that or in a
it's
mental
really
health
nice because
institute."
I know, like, literally these padded rooms. So I don't know whether it's a combination of go in there in the padded room and just smash the life out of it because your head's done in, or that it's soundproof. But all the offices upstairs are getting quite busy now. So I was like, I don't really want to, obviously, when I'm doing a live, I like to be left alone. So I was like, I'm not a big fan of the light. I won't lie. The lighting's not very good, but it's nice to have a space where you can record in
You've
peace.
got
So
down light, hasn't it? It's a light from the top, isn't it? So
yeah,
it shines down. Yeah, that's just similar to the lights in here, and that's why I don't use them.
it's quite yellowy, but never mind. It's still good use. So
And are they in
yeah,
your office? They were just there, and you didn't know they were here.
downstairs. No, they were down. They're downstairs on the ground floor. I'm on the first floor, so they've got like little pods to do things like this in. So I thought I may as well use them. But yeah, it's good.
So cool. So what we're going to
Uh-huh.
talk about today. What's the plans today?
We're going to talk about today frustrating things about being an advisor and how to get past them. And a lot of them might, I don't know, to me, they're like quite standard, but obviously I've been seeing it more like with my advisors, like things where you're like, yeah, that is a bit shit, actually. Like, that is annoying. But because I've been doing it on my own for so long, I've sort of forgot how annoying it is until there's someone else going, why? And I'm like, I don't know, to be honest, but that's just the way it is. So yeah, just frustrating things about being an advisor that are annoying, but you've got to work through.
So what are they? Because I know there's tons I could list off as we go through, but I'm excited to hear what yours are. What are your things?
Right. One of them is obviously the obvious one is when you're trying to work out what a client wants and they're telling you that they want everything. Give me everything. I want everything. I want critical illness. I want this. I want that. I want that. Well, it's this much.
We
Oh,
don't want that much.
well, they only wanted to spend £10. Okay, hon. Well, you don't go to Marks and Spencers and get a full shop and expect to pay £5.99, do you? Like, that's not how it works. So things like that are very annoying. Or they say, well, I found this online. And I'm like, okay. You might have found it online, but you haven't done a full medical. You've got an online price. But these are things that, like,
Yeah.
I'm used to now, because then I'll say, it will be 50 quid online because they haven't taken into account your BMI, your high blood pressure, your medical. I'm giving you a price based on doing all the medical research, and this is what the price is going to be. So
Yeah.
it is going to be cheaper, but feel free to like check if you want. That's so frustrating. And two things. One thing that's been annoying recently, like when providers if they've got a certain type of medical and you've got to have a certain minimum amount of cover, like a minimum sum assured, that is so unfair, I think, like so unfair. Like, if you're going to apply a rating anyway, like for me, if you weren't going to apply any rating and you said, we won't apply a rating, but we want a minimum, why am I struggling to say that word?
Minimum.
Minimum amount of X. Fair enough, because the clients, yes, they might be paying a little bit more, but they're getting more cover and they're not going to get rated. But when you're saying has to be a minimum of this, plus we're going to do X, Y, and Z, is like, that's a bit. How do I go back to a client and say to a client, I found your provider, but you wanted 100 grand. You have to have this. Like, that's not fair. I don't think
How
that's
does
right.
that stack up on a compliance thing? Like if you
I don't know.
were
It's
like,
the provider's stance. It's out of your hands.
because that's really confusing if you think about, like, if it's if you've got your compliance, if your like interpretation of compliance says you've got to insure the mortgage and the mortgage alone, they've got a mortgage of 100 grand, but they say no, we can only insure you if you take 200.
Yeah.
Like, what?
You'd have to, when I am in that situation, I have to put that it's the provider's minimum. Like, it's literally, that's all. If the client's going to get any, sometimes it might be that there's only this one provider who can do it. And if that's the case, it's either no cover or this cover. Like, that's the option I've got. So that's really frustrating. Doctor's reports.
How long do they take? I mean, with right now, the reason why I say doctor's reports, my GP is the slowest thing. I mean, if I book an appointment with my GP, it is 4 weeks before I can see them. And I know that it's all over the news, isn't it? The waiting times and all that stuff. Are doctors' reports getting the same type of treatment? Because obviously they get sent to like GPs. Are they taking forever?
Honest to God, like from my experience of it, like I know that everyone has a different view on doctor's reports. So say, for example, you have a client, Mr. Smith, and he's got a medical. And Mr. Smith has two providers who've said, one provider says doctor's report potentially standard, but this provider says it's a 50% rate and with no doctor's report needed. Some would argue that it's better for them to spend more money and get the rated policy because they're going to be covered straight away. So there's not going to be a gap in cover. And the real reason behind it 99% of the time is that the advisor will get paid a lot quicker. It's a lot less work. Because if you have a client that needs a doctor's report, if you're doing it right, you need to chase that doctor's report like weekly, maybe fortnightly. You're ringing the doctor, hiya, I'm ringing on behalf of Mr. Smith. We're waiting on a report. This client's uninsured, blah, blah, blah. And it is soul destroying, it is. But I always try and think that I'm doing what's best for the client. Like in my head, I have done this for 3 years relentlessly. I'll always do what's best for the client. But sometimes you do sit and think, if I had done the other provider who was going to rate you 50% and give you it straight off, for me, there's a risk that they may cancel because someone might come along and say, actually, you're paying 50% more than you should be. And 50% can be a hell of a lot of money when you're talking about, say, £100 a month, £50 a month. But on the flip side, does the client then start to think you're unprofessional? You don't know what you're doing. You know, when you're coming back to them every week saying, no further forward, no further forward, they don't understand that it's with the doctors. And of course, when they ring the doctor says, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. We haven't had anything. No, you have, Susan. You have. I've spoke to you 17 times. You have. But I've had this one, not one, I've had a few, but one in particular, 9 months it's took.
9 months.
9 months. And I have religiously rang this client's doctors for 9 months, right? Done everything I can, escalated it, put it in writing. They didn't give a shit. When asked, didn't care. I ended up speaking to the client and I was like, look, I'll always ask a client and give them a ring and say, hiya, can you send my report? Because they listen to the patient more because it's obviously the patient's records. But this client in particular was a bit like, why is it taking so long? And I'm like, how do you explain to someone that without sounding like you're being, because it almost sounds fake.
Yeah.
I have not been paid a penny for what I've done for you so far. So all this work I've put in, all these hours, I haven't been paid a thing for because I'm wanting to do what's best for you. Do you really think that if I could get this through quicker, that I wouldn't be doing it? Like, really, do you think I'm enjoying that I have to ring you and say, please, can you give him a ring? Or sorry for another update, but your doctors still haven't sent it. Like, but it's hard from a customer point of view. They're just thinking, well, why is it taking so long? You know, they don't understand the process you've got.
Yeah.
Well, why can't they just take my word? Well, they can't. They can't. They can't. And it's so, like, sometimes you get them back. I had one the other week, could come back in 10 days. Amazing. The ones that are like electronically signed on, as in e-sig, I don't know
so
what
I'm guessing it's depending on the GP and how system. Yeah, if you've got like a young GP or someone who's well into tech and systems and processes, my local one wouldn't be like that. They're all like
on paper. Like mine are all paper, but still, because they're getting, it's private work, they're getting paid for it. So it's really frustrating because you think you're getting paid for it. You've already been paid.
I guess with the GPs though, with the GP reports, definitely, because I noticed that all I can do is from my own experience from my local GP, but they are like they're not that bothered about money. And so and I think that's quite a lot of GPs who are older and they're like if you've got a practice that's got like a couple of older part-time GPs, yeah, it's private work, but if I just sit here and see my people, now they can do it over the phone.
Yeah.
They're like, I can imagine that the wait times for these things are getting ridiculous because a lot of the time, paperwork that gets lost as well. I mean, it's no different than your accountants. How many times your accountant send you something and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't do that and I should have done it.
Yeah, like it gets put on the doctor's pile. So like Millie sometimes will do the doc like chasing, ringing up like the providers and I went upstairs and I said, "Oh, how many have you got through?" In 2 hours, she'd got through 2 because of hold times.
Yeah.
And it's like, at what point does it become where, I mean, are you meant to, this is just me just speaking out loud now, like, am I meant to say to a client, well, I know what 90% of people would say, no, do the cheap. Most people would say, if I went to a client and said, right, I've got provider A who's going to be 50 quid a month, I've got provider B who's going to be £75 a month, provider A want a doctor's report, it may take up to 6 months.
Can you? I don't know, because you're talking about cancelling policies and stuff, so you don't want to be doing that. But I was going to say, like, I don't know how it works. There's no way, because it's a really tough one. It's a really tough one, because the problem as well, though, is if it, and I don't know, tell me, because when I was selling insurance, I was just selling Aviva. So, like, you know, and then when I went like whole market, I didn't really do that. I used to hand it off to somebody else, because when you go whole market from being one provider, it's as you know, very different thing. And most mortgage advisors are just from an Aviva only background, and then that's why they only sell Aviva because of that. But like, surely there's got to be like an argument where it would be cheaper. You say to them, I would just, I'm sorry, what I'm trying to say is, if that policy doesn't happen, it's 9 months. What happens if something happens to them during that 9 months?
Exactly, that's the risk.
That's the thing I don't get. Surely from a compliance point of view, or like, your age costed as well.
Offer obviously the quote would still be honoured, because the quote's the quote. It's not the client's fault how long it's
surely the quote will go. Doesn't the quote go off after a certain amount of time?
It's active when it's an active quote when they're chasing for details.
Oh, so it's not, because I remember the quote goes after.
Yeah, that client the other day the price wasn't amended due to how long it took.
Because like, GP's fault, so they carry.
Yeah. I mean, it might do if it's gone over a year or they've changed it, but it might just be that she hasn't had a birthday. I need to check, but I've never come across it where the price is altered due to the timing. It might do. I might not have just come across that yet, but yeah. So that's what I mean. There's an argument. The argument is, do you do what get the client covered there and then, or do you do what's like? Do you give them the best price in terms of the best offering of cover? Like, this is the most comprehensive cover for the best price. There's no right or wrong, but I am, like, obviously again, like with the advisors, they're now doing it and they're like, this is ridiculous. Like, there must be a better way of doing this than what we're doing. Like, and I'm thinking, is there a better way of doing this? And I'm just being, putting my head in I've always done it this way, so I'm always going to do it that way. Yeah. And I don't want to be that type of advisor. If there's a better way of doing something, I want to be doing it. And I've heard of like these things you can pay for, where you pay them and they'll give, like, you'll pay them a fee and they'll actively chase the doctor's report for you. They'll have it back for you within like 14 or whatever days. But the risk with that is, if they come back declined, it's costing the company money with no guarantee whatsoever that there's going to be you're going to actually get anything for it. But I suppose then it's, again, if I've spent 6 months ringing a doctor's surgery every week, how much of that has that cost me, rather than giving them a fee and getting it done in 2 weeks? So yeah, it's
a tough one as well. Though, the other thing I would say with that, I mean, again, you're both sides of it, but the other thing is, if the GP isn't interested in doing it, then I can't see how any amount of chasing will change the fact that the GP is a slow GP. I'm sure they will.
I have had a few where clients have had to go in and speak to them and they've been fuming at the way. But you get that as well, where the doctor's surgery blame you. Don't know
all the time. All the time.
And I'm like, are you joking? I've got an email in front of me that says we have received the report. It's with the doctor. Like, it was ridiculous. But it gets to a point where the client must be thinking, you're full of shit, like, because they're like, my doctor wouldn't lie.
And they're going to trust you. They're going to trust the doctor. Yeah. Apart from that. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, do you understand that, like, this, we get paid on commission, like, when the policy's live? Like, I have no interest in making this take longer than it needs to. But I need it to be done right at the same time. So, yeah, that frustrates me very much, and it's starting to frustrate. And we need to basically look at a way of getting this done better. So if anyone's got any advice, or feel free to comment or message me with any tips of getting through this, or better, different outlook maybe. Like, sometimes, like I always say, when you're working on your own and you've been doing something for so long the same way, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm right the way I do it. There could be a much better way of looking at it and a different way to justify it with a point of view that is completely different to mine. But
yeah, it might be more efficient. There might be a more efficient, as you say. There might be just a better way. I'm sure there will be someone out there who knows, because it is a tough one. I mean, that has always been one that everyone. I was terrible with it, with stuff like that. I just wouldn't even.
Yeah. And the thing with the frustrating thing as well, like tied on to GP reports, is when you do like pre-sales and you do it very thorough, there's nothing different on your application to what there is on your pre-sale. And you've got your pre-sale reference, and then they say, oh no, it's actually a 50% loading. Why? I've done my pre-sales. This is my pre-sale reference. And I will say though, to people who are in the industry, challenge it every time. Ring your BDM, escalate it, because sometimes they listen to a call, and I've had it where if they've absolutely outright, there's nothing different on the application to what was on the pre-sales, they were told this, they'll honour it, because how can they not? Like, I know it's all an indication, but that can be so annoying when you've like, obviously there's no reason why it should change, and then the price changes and you're like, please explain to me why. There's nothing.
What's going on?
Like, what has happened there? And doesn't matter how much you've done your job perfectly, sometimes it just goes tits up and there's no reason other than, well, it is an indication. And you're like, yeah, but that doesn't really stand when there's nothing changed. Like,
there's so many things like that I'm sure, as you say, and and then are you finding it now? You say like it's more with these things, that these are just things you got used to, and now because you've got staff, that it's just bringing it back up. Is that kind of the main?
Like,
where you're like, oh, I forgot about that problem. That becomes normal, doesn't it?
Yeah,
until
like
someone
you become, like numb to it. You know, like you think like you don't realize it. Like, and
I get it all the time. I have people like, so if you upload a reel, with uploading Instagram reels, one of the problems is that they sometimes Instagram just doesn't upload it. It takes forever. And I just am so used to this, like normal. And then every time I take a new client on, you get them to go, Ash, it's taking forever. I'm like, yeah, it does. What can we do? Nothing. Yeah. Just go to someone else. Come back. And if you're lucky, it might have uploaded. If you're not, well, it's disappeared. Yeah, it's gone. Start again. Like, and it is one of those, like, but you get so used to it when it's yours. And then every time you see you've got someone new to it, you're like, oh yeah, I remember when that was a big problem to me as well.
Yeah, but you accept it and move on with it. And that's what I mean, that's where you get at. So like,
but if you're getting it all the time, so like that's the issue. Like every time I bring a new client on, it becomes a problem for each one of them. It's like that problem again. It keeps coming up again. Whereas actually when it's just you accept it and move on. But when you've got other people dealing as your staff now dealing with these problems, it's like, and I don't know about you.
It reminds you, and then you think, actually, that is a bit of a piss take. That really.
And I also find is that they seem to happen a lot at the same time. So like, if the GPs are taking a long time, it might be that they all take a long time at one point because obviously it's all close. So it's like every person's coming to you going, this isn't working. This isn't working. Then you're like, yeah I know.
I know, but you want to like, I always want to try and fix things and make things better. At the end of the day, if we can do it a better way, then let's try and do it. But I suppose I've never really looked at doing it any differently. So if anyone's got any tips on that, that would be great, because that is one thing that really gets on my nerves is doctors' reports.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to add to this episode apart from slagging off doctors' reports and sorry GPs, but you do suck, majority of you?
I suppose just because, like, one thing I always remember, even when you're running a business and it's successful and it's doing well, just because you've always done something one way doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way, and there's always ways to improve, and that's what you should try and do as much as possible.
Always, yeah. Well, you're a living, breathing example of that. You always spoke to your clients, and now you do it all through booking links and type forms. And before that, obviously, couldn't possibly run without you speaking to every single one. And now look.
Yeah, transitioning, changing, evolving, always. So yeah, it's everything's always changing. You need to be prepared to change with it.
Exactly. All good. See you later.